The metal walls of the Galactic Council Station hummed with life. Thousands of aliens from hundreds of worlds walked through the massive corridors every day. Some had wings, some had tentacles, and some looked almost human. But Doyen was one of the few actual humans working here in deep space. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the construction panel in front of him. The work was hard, but it paid well. More importantly, it kept him busy. Back on Earth, he had lost everything. His wife had left him 3 years ago, and his construction company had failed. Coming to space was supposed to be a fresh start. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. It floated in the darkness between stars, a place where all the alien races came together to talk and make decisions. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. Most aliens still looked at humans like they were children playing with adult toys. Doyen picked up his tools and walked down the corridor. He was fixing the power systems in the residential district today. Rich aliens lived here in fancy apartments that cost more than he would make in 10 lifetimes. As he worked on a panel near one of the luxury quarters, he heard something, a small sound like a whimper. At first, he thought it was just the station's machinery. But then, he heard it again. It sounded like crying. He stopped working and listened carefully. The sound was coming from inside Lord Vexthor's apartment. Vexthor was a Valkyrian, one of the most powerful species in the council. They looked like giant lizards with red scales and cold yellow eyes. Nobody messed with Valkyrians. Doyen knew he should ignore it and keep working. Getting involved with powerful aliens was a bad idea. But the crying sound came again, and this time it sounded like a child. He looked around. The corridor was empty. Slowly, he moved closer to the door. There was a small service entrance on the side, the kind workers used to fix things. He pulled out his access card and hesitated. This could get him fired. Or worse. The crying came again. Doyen swiped his card and the door opened. He slipped inside quietly. The apartment was massive, with high ceilings and expensive furniture. Everything was dark and cold. He followed the sound to the main room to a hallway in the back. There was a storage chamber with a heavy lock on it. The crying was coming from inside. His heart pounded in his chest. This was crazy. He should leave right now. But something in that sound made him think of his own childhood, of being scared and alone. He checked the lock. It was electronic, but simple. With his tools, he could open it. His hands shook as he worked. After 2 minutes, the lock clicked open. Doyen opened the door slowly. The room inside was dark and smelled terrible. As his eyes adjusted, he saw something move in the corner. It was a small dragon, not a big scary dragon from the old stories. This was a child, no bigger than a human 8-year-old. Her scales were silver and beautiful, but they were covered in dirt and dry blood. Fresh wounds marked her back and arms. Her eyes were huge and filled with tears. When she saw Doyen, she pressed herself against the wall and made a small, frightened sound. She tried to speak, but nothing came out except a weak chirp. Hey, it's okay, Doyen said softly. He held up his hands to show he was not dangerous. I'm not going to hurt you. The little dragon stared at him. She was shaking all over. Doyen's heart broke looking at her. He slowly took off his jacket and held it out to her. You're cold, aren't you? The dragon child looked at the jacket, then at him. Carefully, very carefully, she reached out and took it. She wrapped it around herself, and the shaking got a little less. What's your name? Doyen asked. The dragon opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked down, ashamed. You can't talk. Doyen said gently. She shook her head. Over the next few minutes, Doyen learned that the dragon's name was Hannah. She could understand him perfectly, but she could not speak. She used her hands and small sounds to communicate. She was smart and tried hard to make him understand. When he asked who hurt her, she pointed to the door. She made herself big and mean-looking. Vexthor, when he asked where her parents were, her eyes filled with tears. She made flying motions, then pointed up at the ceiling. Then she lay down and closed her eyes. Dead. Doyen felt anger burn in his chest. This child had lost her mother, and now she was being kept like an animal and beaten. I have to go now, he said, but I'll come back. I promise. Hannah grabbed his hand. Her claws were sharp, but she was gentle. She looked at him with such hope in her eyes. Doyen came back every day after that. He brought food, medicine, and clean water. He learned that Hannah's mother had died saving human colonists from a meteor strike 6 months ago. After the mother died, Vexthor had taken Hannah under some old Valkyrian law that said mute dragons were property, not people. The workers on the station knew about Hannah. They had seen Vexthor drag her around on a chain. They had heard her cries at night, but nobody did anything. Vexthor was too powerful, too important. Doyen started teaching Hannah simple sign language, the kind deaf humans used on Earth. She learned fast, faster than any child he had ever seen. Within a week, she could tell him about her day, about being hungry, about being scared. He also started taking pictures of her wounds and writing down everything she told him. He was not sure why. Maybe he hoped someone would care. Maybe he just needed proof that this was really happening. 2 weeks after he found her, everything went wrong. Doyen was bringing food to Hannah in the storage room when he heard footsteps. He barely had time to close the door before Vexthor entered the apartment with several other Valkyrians. Doyen hid in the hallway, his heart pounding. He heard them talking in their language. Then Vexthor walked toward the storage room. Doyen had to run. He slipped out through the service entrance just in time. The next day, when he tried to visit Hannah, the access codes had been changed. He could not get in. That evening, Doyen was walking through the station marketplace when he saw them. Vexthor was there with his friends, and Hannah was with them on a chain around her neck. She looked even thinner than before. People in the marketplace stared, but said nothing. This was normal for them. Doyen's feet moved before his brain could stop them. He walked straight up to Vexthor. "Let her go," he said. The marketplace got quiet. Everyone turned to look. A human telling a Valkyrian lord what to do? This never happened. Vexthor looked down at Doyen. He was twice as tall and 3 times as wide. He smiled, showing all his teeth. "This is my property, human. You have no say here. She's not property. She's a child." Vexthor laughed. Then, without warning, he pulled an energy whip from his belt and struck Hannah across the back. The little dragon collapsed to the ground, trembling and trying not to cry. She looked up at Doyen with those huge eyes, begging him to help. Doyen lunged forward, but 2 of Vexthor's guards grabbed him. "Stay away from what is mine," Vexthor said coldly, "or next time I will have you thrown off the station." They dragged Hannah away. She reached one small hand toward Doyen as she disappeared into the crowd. Doyen stood there in the marketplace, breathing hard, his hands in fists. Everyone was staring at him. Some looked sorry for him. Most just looked away. That night, Doyen could not sleep. He kept seeing Hannah's face. He kept hearing that small cry she made when the whip hit her. He sat up in his small apartment and opened his computer. He started searching through Galactic Council laws. There had to be something. There had to be a way. By morning, Doyen had made a decision. He did not care if it cost him his job. He did not care if it made Earth look bad. He could not walk away from that little dragon. She had already lost her mother. She would not lose hope too, not if he could help it. Doyen knocked on the door of the medical bay. It was early morning and most of the station was still quiet. He needed to talk to someone he could trust. The door opened and Salmon looked out. She was a human medic who worked in the station's hospital. They had become friends over the past year, sharing meals and stories about Earth. "Doyen, what are you doing here so early?" she asked. "I need your help," he said. "Can I come in?" Salmon saw the look on his face and stepped aside. Once the door closed, Doyen told her everything. About finding Hannah, about the abuse, about what happened in the marketplace. Salmon listened carefully. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This is dangerous," she finally said. "Vexthor is on the council. If you try to fight him, you could lose everything." "I know," Doyen said, "but I can't just forget about her. She's a child, Salmon. A scared little girl who's being tortured every day." Salmon sighed. "Show me what you have." Doyen pulled out his tablet and showed her the pictures he had taken of Hannah's injuries. He showed her the notes he had written. Salmon's face got harder with each image. These injuries are severe, she said. Some of these fractures are old. They healed wrong because she never got medical care. She looked up at Doyen. If I examine her, I can document everything properly. Medical records carry weight in court. How do I get her to you? He keeps her locked up. Let me think about it, Salmon said. Over the next few days, Doyen asked questions. He talked to other workers on the station. He learned that there were aliens in the lower districts who might help. One name kept coming up, Elder Kyra. Kyra was an old dragon who lived alone in a small apartment far from the fancy residential areas. Most people said she was crazy, but some said she knew things about dragon history that even the dragon leaders had forgotten. Doyen found her apartment after his shift ended. The door was old and dented. He knocked 3 times. Come in, a rough voice called. Inside, the apartment was filled with books and scrolls. An ancient dragon sat in the corner. Her scales were pale blue, and many were missing. She looked at Doyen with eyes that seemed to see right through him. You are the human who found the mute child, Kyra said. It was not a question. How did you know? I know everything that happens on this station, Kyra said. Sit down. Doyen sat on the floor across from her. I need to understand. Why is Vextor allowed to treat her like this? Why does the law say she's property? Kyra made a sad sound. Because my people are fools. Long ago, dragons who could not speak were considered sacred. We believed they could hear the voices of the stars. But that was thousands of years ago. Now, most dragons think mute children are broken, worthless. That's horrible. Yes, Kyra agreed. The child you found is special. Her name is Hannah, yes? Her mother was Myri, a noble dragon of the messenger bloodline. Doyen leaned forward. What does that mean? It means Hannah comes from an ancient and powerful family. But when she was born mute, the Dragon Council wanted to kill her. That is our law for imperfect children. Kyra's eyes grew distant. Myri refused. She took her daughter and ran. She came here to this station, hoping to find a place where they could both be safe. And then she died saving humans. Doyen said quietly, yes, she died a hero, and the Valkyrians, who have always hated dragons, used their old laws to claim Hannah. They said because she cannot speak, she is not truly sentient, not truly alive in the way that matters. But that's insane. She understands everything. She's smart and kind and... I know, Kyra interrupted, but the law does not care. Unless someone challenges in the Galactic Court, nothing will change. She looked at Doyen carefully. Is that what you plan to do, human? Challenge the law. I don't know if I can, Doyen admitted. I'm nobody, just a construction worker. Myri was nobody, too, when she decided to save those colonists. Kyra said, but she did it anyway, because some things are more important than being safe. Doyen left Kyra's apartment with his head full of thoughts. Could he really challenge the law? Would anyone listen to him? The next day, he went to see Ambassador Taeyong, the senior human representative on the station. The ambassador's office was clean and organized. Taeyong himself was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. Mr. Doyen, Taeyong said, I heard about the incident in the marketplace. I'm sorry, but you need to stay away from Lord Vextor and his property. She's not property, Doyen said firmly, and I want to file a legal challenge. Taeyong's face went pale. Do you understand what you're asking? If you challenge a council member and lose, it makes all humans look bad. Earth could lose voting privileges. We could lose trade agreements. So, we should let a child be tortured because it's politically convenient? That's not fair, Taeyong said. This is complicated. There are millions of humans across the galaxy now. I have to think about all of them. I'm only thinking about one little dragon who can't even cry out loud when she's hurt, Doyen said. If we can't help her, what's the point of being in the council at all? Taeyong rubbed his face. Even if I wanted to help, you would need a lawyer, someone who understands galactic law, and you would need evidence, real evidence, not just pictures. I can get evidence. And I already called a friend on Earth. He's a lawyer. He's coming here. Taeyong looked surprised. You're serious about this? Yes. The ambassador was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "If you do this, I can't officially support you, but I won't stop you either. Just understand what you're risking." "I understand," Doyen said. 2 weeks later, Hyunwoo arrived from Earth. He was Doyen's oldest friend, a lawyer who specialized in difficult cases. He was thin and wore glasses, and always looked worried about something. "You got yourself into a real mess this time," Hyunwoo said as they sat in Doyen's apartment. "I know. Can you help?" Hyunwoo opened his computer and started going through the documents Doyen had collected. "Maybe. There's precedent for challenging ownership claims if you can prove the property is actually sentient. But dragons are already recognized as sentient. The problem is a specific law about mute dragons. Kyra said they used to be considered sacred." "Really?" Hyunwoo's eyes lit up. "Can she prove that? With documents?" "I think so. Then we might have a chance. If we can show that the current law goes against ancient dragon tradition, we can argue it's not legitimate." Over the next few days, Hyunwoo worked with Kyra to gather ancient texts. Meanwhile, Salmon found a way to examine Hannah. She told Vexthor that the council required health checks for all dependents. It was a lie, but he believed it. When Hannah came to the medical bay, Doyen was there waiting. The little dragon saw him, and her eyes went wide. She pulled against the guard, holding her chain. "It's okay," Doyen said softly. "I'm here." Salmon did a complete examination, while the guard watched. She found broken bones, malnutrition, and signs of repeated trauma. She documented everything carefully. When Hannah had to leave, she reached for Doyen. He took her small hand and squeezed it gently. "I'm going to get you out of there," he promised. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. She put her other hand over her heart, then pointed at him. It was the sign he had taught her. It meant thank you. That night, Doyen got a message from Ambassador Taeyong. Vexthor had announced he was leaving the station in 1 week. He was taking Hannah to his home world. Doyen's blood went cold. If Hannah left the station, she would be gone forever. His home world was in Valkyrian space, where human law meant nothing. He called Hyunwoo immediately. "We're out of time. We have to follow the challenge now." "We're not ready," Hyunwoo said. "We need more time to prepare." "We don't have more time. It's now or never." Hyunwoo was quiet. Then he said, "Okay, I'll file the papers tomorrow. But Doyen, you need to understand something. Once we do this, there's no going back. Vexthor will come after you with everything he has." "I know," Doyen said. "Do it anyway." The next morning, Hyunwoo filed an official challenge in the Galactic Court. He claimed that Hannah was being held illegally and that Doyen should be granted guardianship based on the debt owed to humanity by her mother's sacrifice. The station exploded with news. A human challenging a Valkyrian lord? It was unheard of. Aliens gathered in groups to discuss it. Some laughed. Some were curious. Some were angry. Vexthor's response came quickly. He filed countercharges against Doyen for theft and trespassing. He demanded Doyen be arrested immediately. But the court said no. Once a legal challenge was filed, both parties had to wait for the hearing. Nothing could happen until then. Doyen had bought them time. But now the real fight was about to begin. The courtroom was enormous. It was built to hold hundreds of aliens from different worlds. The ceiling was so high that Doyen could barely see it. Everything was made of white stone that seemed to glow with its own light. Judge Wonchik sat at the highest bench. He was a crystalline, a being made entirely of living crystal that changed colors when he moved. His species was known for being fair and neutral. At least, that was what Hyunwoo had told Doyen. Below the judge's bench were seats for the council representatives. Dozens of different aliens sat there, watching with various expressions. Some had faces Doyen could read. Others were completely alien, with too many eyes or no eyes at all. Doyen sat at a small table with Hyunwoo. Across from them, Vexthor sat with 3 expensive lawyers. The Valkyrian looked confident and relaxed. He smiled at Doyen like this was all a game he had already won. Behind them, the gallery was packed with observers. Humans from across the station had come to watch. So had many other species. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when a nobody human challenged a powerful lord. All rise for Judge Wunchik, a voice announced. Everyone stood. The judge's crystal body flashed bright blue, then settled into a calm green color. We are here to hear the case of Doyen versus Lord Vextor regarding custody of the dragon child known as Hannah, the judge said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. Lord Vextor, you may present your case first. Vextor's head lawyer stood up. She was a tall alien with silver skin and 3 arms. Her name was Advocate Shellix, and she was famous for never losing a case. Thank you, Your Honor, Shellix said. This case is very simple. Lord Vextor legally acquired the dragon child Hannah under Valkyrian property law, Section 47, which clearly states that mute dragons are classified as non-sentient property. This law has been recognized by the Galactic Council for over 300 years. She pulled up holographic documents that floated in the air. Here you can see the official transfer of ownership after the child's mother died. Everything was done according to law. The human, Doyen, has no legal claim to the property. He is simply a stranger who broke into Lord Vextor's residence and attempted to steal valuable property. The child is not property, Doyen said loudly, unable to stop himself. Judge Wunchik's crystals flashed red. Mr. Doyen, you will have your turn to speak. Stay quiet until then. Hyunwoo put a hand on Doyen's arm. Let her finish, he whispered. Shellix continued for 20 minutes. She brought up law after law, case after case. She showed records of other mute dragons being owned throughout history. She made it all sound reasonable and normal. Furthermore, Shellix said, Lord Vextor is a generous owner. He has fed the creature, housed it, and even attempted to train it. The fact that the human found the creature dirty and injured only shows that it is difficult to manage. Lord Vextor has done nothing wrong. She sat down, looking satisfied. Judge Wunchik turned to Hyunwoo. You may present your case. Hyunwoo stood up. He looked small and nervous next to all these powerful aliens. But when he spoke, his voice was steady. Your Honor, we are not here to argue about property law. We are here to argue about right and wrong. The child Hannah is not property. She is a living, thinking, feeling person who's been abused and tortured. He pulled up his own holographic images. These were the pictures Doyen had taken, and the medical records from Samon's examination. These are not the injuries of a creature that is difficult to manage, Hyunwoo said. These are the injuries of systematic abuse. Broken bones, malnutrition, wounds from energy whips. Judge Wunchik, no law in the galaxy should allow this to happen to a child. Murmurs ran through the courtroom. Some of the council representatives leaned forward to see the images better. My colleague wants to talk about ancient laws, Hyunwoo continued. Let me show you an even more ancient law. Elder Kyra stood up in the gallery. She was wearing formal dragon robes that Doyen had never seen before. She looked like royalty. I am Elder Kyra of the Messenger Bloodline, she announced. I have brought texts from the First Dragon archives. These texts are over 5,000 years old. They prove that mute dragons were once considered sacred. They were called star listeners and were honored above all others. She brought forward several old scrolls. Judge Wunchik examined them carefully. His crystals turned purple, which meant he was thinking deeply. These documents appear authentic, the judge said, but they're very old. Laws change over time. They change, Hyunwoo agreed, but the question is whether they should change. The current law says mute dragons are not sentient, but we have proof that Hannah is completely sentient. She understands multiple languages. She can communicate through sign language. She draws pictures and expresses emotions. The only thing she cannot do is speak out loud. Many creatures understand commands without being truly sentient, Shellix argued. A well-trained animal can appear smart. Then let's test her, Hyunwoo said. Bring Hannah into this court and let the judge see for himself. Shellix looked at Vextor. The Valkyrian's face showed anger for first time. That is unnecessary, he said. Why? Doyen called out. If she's just property, what are you afraid of? Judge Wunchik's crystals flashed. Mr. Doyen, I warned you about speaking out of turn. But then he looked at Vextor. However, It is a reasonable request. Bring the child to the court. Vextor had no choice. He nodded to his guards. 10 minutes later, they brought Hannah in. She was wearing a dirty cloth and had a chain around her neck. She was so thin that Doyen could see her ribs. When she saw all the aliens staring at her, she tried to make herself small. But then she saw Doyen. Her eyes went wide, and she pulled toward him. The guard yanked the chain back hard, and she fell to the floor. Several gasps came from the gallery. Doyen started to stand, but Hyunwoo held him down. "Hannah," Judge Wonchik said gently, "can you understand me?" The little dragon looked up at the judge and nodded. "Do you know where you are?" She nodded again. Then she pointed at the judge, then at the lawyers, then at all the seats around them. She was showing that she understood this was a court. "Are you afraid?" the judge asked. Hannah looked at Vextor and nodded very hard. Then she looked at Doyen and shook her head. Judge Wonchik leaned forward. "Can you tell me, in any way you can, what you want?" Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she walked toward Doyen, dragging the guard behind her. She reached out her small hand to Doyen. She pointed at him, then at herself, then made a hugging motion. The entire courtroom understood. She wanted to stay with Doyen. "She has clearly expressed a preference," Hyunwoo said. "She understands the question and gave an answer. That is sentience, Your Honor." Shellick stood up quickly. "The creature is simply drawn to whoever feeds it. This proves nothing." "Then let me ask her something else," Judge Wonchik said. He looked at Hannah. "Do you understand that Lord Vextor claims to own you?" Hannah nodded sadly. "Do you believe you are property or a person?" Hannah thought about this. Then she pointed at herself, then at the judge, then at Doyen, then at Kyra. She was pointing at people. Then she pointed at a chair, then at the chain around her neck. She shook her head hard. She was saying she was like the people, not like the objects. Judge Wonchik's crystals turned bright white. "Remarkable," he said quietly. "This is ridiculous." Vextor stood up. "She is mine by law. I will not have my property rights questioned by a stupid human and a broken animal." He pulled out his energy whip and cracked it in the air. The sound was like thunder. Hannah dropped to the ground, trembling. Her whole body shook and small, scared sounds came from her throat. She looked up at Doyen with pure terror in her eyes. Without thinking, Doyen jumped over the table and ran to her. He threw himself over Hannah, covering her with his body. "Don't you touch her!" he shouted at Vextor. "I don't care what the law says. I don't care if you're powerful. You will not hurt her again." The courtroom erupted in noise. Guards rushed forward. Judge Wonchik's crystals flashed red and blue rapidly. "Order!" the judge shouted. "Everyone sit down." Slowly, the noise died down. Doyen stayed on the floor, holding Hannah. She clung to him, her small claws gripping his shirt. Judge Wonchik looked at the scene before him. A small dragon child, terrified and shaking. A human protecting her with his own body. A powerful lord with a whip, looking angry and cruel. "I need time to review all the evidence," the judge said. "We will take a break. Court will resume in 2 hours." As the guard tried to take Hannah away, she cried out without words. She reached for Doyen desperately. Doyen tried to hold on to her, but more guards came and pulled them apart. "I promise," Doyen called to her as they dragged her away. "I promise I'll get you out of this." Hannah's eyes stayed on him until she disappeared through the doors. Hyunwoo put his hand on Doyen's shoulder. That was either the best thing you could have done or the worst. The judge saw everything. Now we just have to hope it was enough. Doyen sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. It has to be enough. It has to be. The 2 hours felt like 2 years. Doyen sat in a small waiting room with Hyunwoo and Saman. Nobody spoke much. They all knew that everything depended on what the judge decided. Ambassador Taeon came in halfway through the wait. He looked tired and worried. "Half the council is angry at you," he told Doyen. "They say you're making humans look like troublemakers. The other half is watching carefully to see what happens." "I don't care about politics," Doyen said. "I know, but you should know that if you lose this case, Earth might face consequences. Trade sanctions, travel restrictions, maybe worse. And if I win, Taeyong smiled slightly. If you win, you'll be a hero, and maybe you'll change some things that need changing. He put his hand on Doyen's shoulder. For what it's worth, I hope you win. When they returned to the courtroom, there were even more observers than before. News of what happened had spread across the entire station. Aliens of every species packed the gallery. Some held signs supporting Doyen. Others held signs supporting Vextor and traditional law. Doyen noticed a group of dragons sitting together in one corner. They wore expensive robes and looked important. Elder Kyra sat near them, but not with them. She caught Doyen's eye and nodded slowly. Judge Wunchik entered, and everyone stood. His crystals were a deep purple color. When he sat down, the whole room went silent. I have reviewed all the evidence, the judge said. I have read the ancient texts. I have examined the medical records. I have watched the recordings of the child Hannah demonstrating clear understanding and communication. He paused. Doyen's heart hammered in his chest. However, the judge continued, this case is not simple. We are not just deciding about one child. We are deciding about a law that has existed for hundreds of years. If I rule against this law, it affects every similar case across the galaxy. Doyen felt his hopes sink. The judge was going to rule for Vextor. He could hear it in his voice. Therefore, Judge Wunchik said, I must hear from one more witness before I can make my decision. I have called for someone who has authority to speak on dragon law and tradition. The doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Everyone turned to look. An enormous dragon entered the room. He was 3 times the size of any dragon Doyen had seen before. His scales were deep gold and seemed to shine with their own light. His eyes were ancient and wise. He moved with a grace that made everyone instinctively move out of his way. The group of important dragons in the corner immediately stood and bowed deeply. Elder Kyra stood too, but she bowed even lower than the others. Who is that? Doyen whispered to Hyunwoo. I have no idea, Hyunwoo whispered back, but everyone's terrified of him. Judge Wunchik's crystals flashed bright white. The court recognizes Elder Dragon Sovereign Erix, ruler of the dragon homeworld and keeper of the ancient laws. Erix walked to the center of the courtroom. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and powerful. It filled the entire space. I came as soon as I heard about this case, Erix said. I have been watching from my world, but I did not believe what I saw. I had to come here myself to see if it was true. He turned to look at Vextor. The Valkyrian suddenly looked much smaller. You, Erix said, pointing at Vextor, you dared to claim a dragon child as property? The law allows it, Vextor said, but his voice shook. Valkyrian law clearly states. I do not care about Valkyrian law, Erix interrupted. I care about dragon law, and you have violated the oldest and most sacred of our laws. He turned to Judge Wunchik. Bring the child here. Now! The judge nodded quickly. Guards were sent to get Hannah. While they waited, Erix looked around the courtroom. Many years ago, dragons were proud and wise, he said. We honored all our children, especially those who were different. Mute dragons were considered blessed. We believed they could hear things others could not. They were treated as treasures. He looked at the group of important dragons in the corner. They all looked down, ashamed. But over time we became cruel. We began to think that only perfect dragons had value. We made laws that allowed us to discard children who were born different. We forgot what made us great in the first place. The doors opened again, and guards brought Hannah in. She was still wearing the chain. When she saw the massive golden dragon, she froze in fear. Erix looked at her, and his expression changed. His eyes went wide. Come here, child, he said gently. Hannah did not move. She looked at Doyen, asking with her eyes if it was safe. Doyen nodded at her. It's okay, he said softly. Slowly, Hannah walked toward Erix. The ancient dragon lowered his huge head to look at her closely. He examined her face, her scales, her eyes. Then he saw the mark on her shoulder. It was a small pattern of scales that looked like a star. Erix's entire body began to glow. The mark of the messenger, he breathed. You are of the ancient bloodline. He stood up to his full height, and his voice rang out like thunder. This child is not just any dragon. She carries the blood of the first star listeners. In the old days, she would have been raised in the highest temple. She would have been taught by the wisest teachers. She would have been honored and protected. He turned to Vextor and his eyes blazed with anger. And you kept her in chains. You beat her. You treated her like an animal. Vextor tried to speak, but no words came out. Eryx looked at Judge Wunschik. I invoke the right of ancient testimony. As sovereign of the dragon homeworld, I declare that any law allowing mute dragons to be treated as property is void. It goes against our oldest traditions and our most sacred beliefs. Judge Wunschik's crystals flashed rapidly through many colors. Your testimony is recognized and carries great weight, Your Majesty. Eryx then did something unexpected. He walked over to where Doyen sat. The massive dragon looked down at the small human. You are the one who found her, Eryx said. You are the one who tried to protect her. Yes, Doyen said. His voice was steady even though his legs were shaking. Her mother was Myri, one of our greatest heroes. She died saving humans from certain death. By our oldest laws, when a dragon dies saving another species, a debt of honor is created. That debt passes to their children. Eryx placed one massive claw gently on Doyen's shoulder. You, human, have honored that debt. You have protected Myri's daughter when your own people could not. You have risked everything for a child who is not even your species. He turned back to the judge. I declare that Hannah should be placed in the guardianship of this human, Doyen. The debt between dragons and humans will be considered paid. And more than that, a new bond will be formed. A bond of choice, not blood. A bond of love, not law. The courtroom exploded with noise. Aliens shouted in different languages. Some cheered, some protested. The important dragons in the corner looked shocked. Judge Wunschik had to call for order 3 times before the room quieted down. This is highly irregular, Shellick said. Standing up, Your Majesty cannot simply override Galactic Council law. I am not overriding Council law, Eryx said calmly. I am providing testimony about dragon law and tradition. The judge must still make his decision. Everyone looked at Judge Wunschik. His crystals turned pure white, then slowly shifted to green. I have made my decision, the judge said, based on the evidence presented, including the testimony of Elder Dragon Sovereign Eryx. I rule that the child Hannah is a sentient being with full rights under galactic law. She is not and never was property. Doyen felt like he could not breathe. Furthermore, the judge continued, I grant full legal guardianship of Hannah to the human Doyen, effective immediately. The debt of honor between dragons and humans is recognized and honored. The judge looked at Vextor. Lord Vextor, you are hereby stripped of any claim to the child. Additionally, you are charged with abuse of a sentient being. You will face trial for these crimes. Guards moved forward and placed restraints on Vextor. The Valkyrian looked around wildly, but nobody came to help him. Even his own lawyers stepped away. As they let him out, Hannah ran to Doyen. She crashed into him and wrapped her small arms around his waist. She was shaking, but this time it was not from fear. Doyen dropped to his knees and hugged her tightly. Tears ran down his face. You're safe now, he whispered. You're safe. I've got you. Hannah looked up at him. Her eyes were full of tears, too. She put her small hand over her heart, then pointed at Doyen. Thank you. Then she did something new. She pointed at her own chest, then at Doyen's heart. It was a sign they had never practiced. But Doyen understood it immediately. She was saying she loved him. He was saying he loved her too. Around them, the courtroom erupted in applause. But Doyen did not hear it. All he could see was the little dragon in his arms who would never be hurt again. The days after the trial were strange and wonderful. Doyen had to sign many papers and attend many meetings. Reporters from across the galaxy wanted to interview him, but he said no to most of them. He had more important things to do. Hannah needed time to heal, not just her body, but her heart too. Salmon examined her properly and found that she needed medicine for infections and special food to help her gain weight. The station gave them a bigger apartment in the human district, one with 2 bedrooms and a real kitchen. The first night in their new home, Hannah walked around touching everything gently, as if she was afraid it would disappear. She had never had her own room before. When Doyen showed her the bed with clean sheets and soft pillows, she just stared at it. "It's yours," Doyen said. "You can sleep here every night. Nobody will take it away." Hannah climbed onto bed carefully. She lay down and pulled the blanket over herself. Then she looked at Doyen with such happiness in her eyes that he had to turn away so she would not see him cry. But healing was not easy. Hannah had nightmares almost every night. She would wake up shaking and cry without sound. Doyen would hear her and come sit with her until she fell back asleep. Sometimes it took hours. She was also afraid of many things. Loud noises made her hide. When tall aliens walked past them in the corridors, she pressed herself against Doyen's leg. She always checked to make sure the door was not locked from the outside. Samin told Doyen this was normal. She was hurt for a long time. It will take a long time for her to feel safe. Just be patient. Doyen was patient. He took time off from his construction job to stay home with Hannah. They spent days just sitting together, reading books or drawing pictures. Hannah loved to draw. She filled pages with images of stars and dragons and flowers. One day, Elder Kyra came to visit. She brought gifts, old dragon toys, and books written in the dragon language. She also brought something else. "This belonged to your mother," Kyra said, handing Hannah a small pendant on a chain. It was silver and shaped like a star. Hannah held it carefully, and more tears came to her eyes. She put it on and never took it off. Kyra began coming every week to teach Hannah about dragon culture and history. She taught her the old ways, the stories of star listeners, and the messenger bloodline. Hannah listened to everything with hungry attention. "She is very smart," Kyra told Doyen. "Smarter than most dragons her age." Being mute did not damage her mind. It only made others think she was damaged. Hyunwoo stayed on the station for a few more weeks to help with the legal work. The trial had created a lot of changes. The Galactic Council was now reviewing all laws about sentient rights. Dozens of species were looking at their own traditions and asking if they were fair. "You started something big," Hyunwoo told Doyen. "There are already 3 more cases being filed by people who want to challenge old laws." "I just wanted to help one little girl," Doyen said. "I know, but sometimes helping one person helps everyone." Ambassador Taeyong came to visit too. He looked much happier than before. "Earth's reputation in the Council has actually improved," he said. "Many species respect us now for standing up for what was right. We've been invited to join 2 new trade agreements and 3 scientific partnerships." He smiled at Hannah, who was coloring at the table. One little dragon changed everything. But not everyone was happy about the changes. Some aliens still believed in the old ways. Doyen got threatening messages sometimes. Security had to watch their apartment to make sure nobody tried to hurt them. One day, a group of traditional dragons came to the station. They wanted to take Hannah back to the dragon homeworld. They said she belonged with her own kind. Elder Dragon Sovereign Eric's came back to deal with them himself. He met with them in a private chamber, and Doyen heard his voice booming through the walls. When the meeting was over, the traditional dragons left quickly and never came back. Eric's came to see Doyen and Hannah afterward. The massive golden dragon had to bend down to fit through their door. "They will not bother you again," Eric said. "I have made it very clear that Hannah's place is with you, if that is what she wants." He looked at Hannah. "You could come to the homeworld if you wished. You would be honored there now, treated like royalty." Hannah thought about this. Then she walked over to Doyen and took his hand. She shook her head. This was her home. Eric's nodded. "I understand, but know that you are always welcome among dragons. And if you ever need anything, you need only ask." Before he left, Eric's gave them a communication device. "This connects directly to me. If there's ever trouble, use it." As the weeks turned into months, Hannah grew stronger and healthier. Her scales became shiny and bright. She gained weight and grew taller. But more importantly, she started to smile and play. Salmon brought her daughter, a human girl named Nari who was about Hannah's age. At first, Hannah was scared to meet another child, but Nari was kind and patient. She learned some of the sign language Hannah used, and soon they were playing together every day. Watching Hannah laugh silently while playing with Nari made Doyen's heart feel full. One day, a young dragon came to the station. Her name was Yuna, and she was the activist who had helped during the trial. She had started an organization to help dragons who were different or hurt. There are dozens of mute dragons across the galaxy who are still being treated like property, Yuna told Doyen. Hannah's case gave them hope. Would you be willing to help other cases? Doyen looked at Hannah. She was listening carefully. Then she nodded at him. Yes, they should help. So Doyen began working with Yuna's organization. He could not save everyone, but he could tell his story. He could show other people that it was possible to stand up against unfair laws. Hyunwoo helped write new legislation that became known as Hannah's Law. It said that no being could be considered property just because they could not speak. The law was debated for months in the council, but eventually it passed. It was not perfect, but it was a start. On the 1-year anniversary of the trial, there was a ceremony at the station. Judge Wonchik presented Doyen with an award for courage. Ambassador Taeyong gave a speech about how one person's kindness could change the galaxy. But the best part came at the end. Elder Dragon Sovereign Eric's arrived with surprise. He brought a holographic message that had been recorded by dragons across the homeworld. Hundreds of dragons appeared in the projection, all making signs with their hands. They were using the sign language Hannah used. They had all learned it so they could communicate with mute dragons. And they all signed the same message. We see you. We hear you. You matter. Hannah watched with wide eyes. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. For the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged somewhere. That night, after everyone had gone home, Doyen and Hannah sat together on their couch. Hannah was tired from all the excitement. She leaned against Doyen's side. He put his arm around her. Are you happy? He asked. Hannah looked up at him. She made several signs with her hands. I was alone. Now I have family. I was scared. Now I am safe. I was silent. Now I am heard. Then she made one more sign. She pointed at Doyen, then touched her own chest where a human heart would be. You are my dad. Doyen felt tears in his eyes. And you are my daughter. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside the window, stars shone in the darkness of space. Ships came and went from the station. Thousands of aliens lived and worked here, all different. All tried to make their way in the galaxy. Doyen thought about how much had changed in 1 year. He had come to space as a broken man running from his failures. He had been nobody special, just a construction worker trying to get by. But then he found a little dragon who needed help, and helping her had given his life meaning again. He learned that family was not about being the same species. It was not about blood or tradition. Family was about choosing to love someone and protect them, no matter the cost. Hannah fell asleep against his side, her small hand holding his. The pendant from her mother gleamed softly around her neck. She was smiling in her sleep now, no more nightmares. Doyen carefully picked her up and carried her to her bedroom. He tucked her into bed and kissed her forehead gently. Good night, my daughter, he whispered. As he turned off the light and walked to his own room, Doyen felt something he had not felt in years. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Tomorrow, Hannah would start at the station school. She would learn with other children of many species. Simon had found a teacher who knew sign language, and Nari would be in the same class. Next week, they were going to visit Earth so Hannah could see where humans came from. Doyen's brother Miho wanted to meet his new niece. Next month, Yuna wanted them to speak at a council session about dragon rights. There would be challenges ahead. There would be hard days, but they would face everything together, because that was what families did. In the darkness of space, on a station filled with aliens from across the galaxy, a human man and a dragon child had found each other. They had fought against cruelty and won. They had challenged ancient laws and changed them. But most importantly, they had taught everyone watching that love was stronger than tradition, that compassion was more powerful than law, and that sometimes the most heroic thing you could do was simply refuse to walk away from someone who needed help. The mute dragon no longer trembled. She was safe now. She was loved. She was home. And the human dad who had made the court fall silent had found his purpose. Together, they had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be a family.